Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. Guys, this is going to be my favorite episode, I think, of all time. Right now, we have one of the greatest, if not the greatest, agent ever. He's represented 8 number one NFL quarterbacks. He's hundreds and hundreds of people, and he's has one of the biggest hearts. I've actually talked to some of your clients, and they say that you have one of the biggest hearts of any person, not just agent, that they've ever known. So please welcome to the show. Mike is NFL Hall of Famer. You should be a Hall of Famer, Leigh Steinberg.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind, Richard. Happy to be with you.
I'm so grateful to be able to talk to you. I've been an NFL freak since I've been a little kid, and I always see your face popping up everywhere. And then when the movie Jerry Maguire came out, I was like, wow, that blew my mind. So, but obviously you weren't the king to the stars yet. So tell us a little bit about where you come from, where you grew up, and how you became the man that you are today.
So I grew up in Los Angeles, went a year to UCLA, then to Cal Berkeley. I ended up student body president in the tumultuous days of the 60s. And every time we demonstrated, the governor at that point was Ronald Reagan. And I learned everything I needed to learn about negotiating from interacting with Governor Reagan, who later became president. And I was a dorm counselor in an undergrad dorm while I was going to law school. They moved the freshman football team into the dorm, and one of the students was Steve Bartkowski, who in 1975 became the very first pick overall in the draft, the Atlanta Falcons, and he asked me to represent him. Well, Richard, there really wasn't sports agentry back then. A team could just slam the phone down and say, "We don't deal with agents." And so it obviously evolved over time. But my dad had 2 core values. One was treasure relationships, especially family. And the second was make a meaningful difference in other people's lives and try to help people who can't help themselves. So I saw that the athletes could be terrific role models, and asked them to go back to the high school community and lay down roots, set up a scholarship fund, or work with a church or Boys and Girls Club. And then at the collegiate level, go back to that institution and rebond with them. So that's Edgerrin James endowing a full scholarship at the University of Miami, or it's Troy Aikman at UCLA. And then a charitable foundation with the leading business figures, political figures, and community leaders on a board to execute a program for some problem that's near and dear to an athlete's heart. So that's the running back work done, putting the 200th single mother and their family into the first home they'll ever own by making the down payment and outfitting the house. But it's athletes changing lives. So that became the sort of requirement of our practice, and trying to make a difference. And it grew to the point where we had 64 first round draft picks in football, and 8 of them were the first overall. And there were weekends I had half the starting quarterbacks, and built a big baseball practice and a basketball practice. And here we are.
So now, did you go to school to be a lawyer, or what were you taking in college?
I am a lawyer, but I thought that that I would be a criminal defense lawyer or a prosecutor or something. That there was no field to aspire to. So I had gone to law school and I was choosing between different job offers. It was 1975 and I never got there because Bartkowski asked me to do it. We got the largest rookie contract in NFL history. And when I saw the role modeling ability, I thought, here's something where I can counsel young men and be part of their emotional and business development. And so I get the teaching counseling function. I can focus them on second career so that we're planning very early what they can do. And together we can make a profound difference. So 12 of our players in football are in the Hall of Fame, and it's Troy Aikman and Steve Young and Warren Moon and Bruce Smith and Thurman Thomas and Derek Thomas and Tony Gonzalez and Kenny Easley and Kevin Green and John Lynch. So it's this next draft will be my 49th.
Wow. But now, of the people that you mentioned, unfortunately, we've lost a few. Mr. Green and also Derek. But of the people you mentioned, almost all of them either own businesses, they're doing stuff outside of football, like Tony's everywhere. Bruce has done some great things. So most of those people had done something after they got out of football. Well, I'm noticing a lot of times guys get out of the pro league maybe 2.5 years, and then they're bankrupt within 3 years of getting out of the league because they don't really think of the end game, right?
So we have financial planners helping the athletes. So they have a budget, they have a financial plan, they are educated that the fact they're making $15 million this year doesn't mean they'll make that when they're 45. And they do good financial planning. But on the second career front, I'll ask an athlete, what other skills do you have or aspirations? Do you want to be in media? Do you want to coach? Do you want to run a business? And so 3 of my players actually became minority owners of teams. Work done. The former Tampa Bay Atlanta running back owns part of the Atlanta Falcons. Deron Cherry owned part of the Jacksonville Jaguars. But here would be an example. So you have players like Steve Young or Brent Jones or Tim McDonald playing for the 49ers. And I would say to them, does the fact that you train in Santa Clara give you any ideas about business people you should network with off the field? Well, the high tech, venture capital. So it's not by chance that a Brent Jones during his career was networking, and he put together a $4 billion hedge fund. And Steve Young is head of another venture capital fund. And in the case of Bruce Smith, he was helped by Virginia Tech alums to get into construction business. And he also owns part of one of the top luxury hotels in Washington, D.C. So you need to be thinking about these concepts, Richard, before the career comes to an end. You need to be building, do you want to run a coffee bean? Do you, if it's going to be broadcast, like we have Desmond Howard and Troy and Steve Young and a whole series of players doing it. Let's figure out a way to be working on that in the off seasons already, so that it's a smooth and exciting transition into second career.
And I love that because a lot of our people that are going to watch this are military, and a lot of us, while we're in, we really don't think about the day that we have to hang up our uniform. And once we hang up our uniform, we don't have the camaraderie. We don't have a job anymore. And honestly, we don't have a mission. And that's when a lot of us attempt suicide because, once we hang up the uniform, if I'm not Sergeant Kaufman, well, who the hell am I? So
I get you. The 2 closest groups sociologically that I could think of would be military and professional athletes. They have band of brothers, they have camaraderie, they have people watching their back, they have structure, so they know what you're supposed to do every day and you've got everything planned out. And all of a sudden you lose the camaraderie and the structure. And it is hard identity-wise. That's why it's so important to and I've had such an appreciation for the fact that I'm not fighting in a war. So the people who are, we did live hookups between my Super Bowl parties in Tampa and New York and Minnesota, where we had we had a live hookup between the party and the. You know what? Something just came on the screen. So hang on. Do you edit this?
Yeah, everything is live, but don't worry about it. Nobody's watching
it. Anyway, I'm sorry, something came up on the screen.
But you do. This is all real life. This is what it does.
But anyway, the point is that we've done fundraisers for Wounded Warriors and for Temper Phi and a number of different organizations. But the two groups are parallel. They both are in denial about their physical health, right? In other words, they do. The military, along with players, do things that the rest of us think are ridiculous in terms of injury. They both get concussions, right? And they have TBI problems. And I've been working on solution for TBI. I finally found some. And we've talked before about the fact I had a crisis of conscience back in the late 80s because representing half the starting quarterbacks, they kept getting hit in the head. And we go to doctors, Richard, ask how many are too many? When should you retire? They didn't know. They didn't have answers. So I started holding concussion conferences, and we found out that 3 or more is the number that leads to Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, premature senility, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and depression. And again, military personnel and retired share that same problem with the athletes. But I found something called RTMS, which is a process that through neuroplasticity can rewire your brain and be very beneficial. There's another one in Orlando called Nestri, which is brain training. So we're trying to find solution for that problem that bedevils both groups.
And that's one thing that's not talked about a lot in the military. I mean, we talk about concussions, we talk about TBIs, which I have a traumatic brain injury from military service, but we really don't talk about CTE much. And unfortunately, we're starting to see a lot of it, but thank God it's actually coming out to the front, because a lot of the new football helmets, they seem to be a lot safer than what they used to have years ago.
You're never. They did an experiment and during training preseason, and they put on the Guardian helmet.
Yeah.
And I think it did about 20%. But what you really need to do is take contact out of preseason and practices and just do it during the games. That would cut 40% down. Then there are all sorts of rules about the head and neck, and those can be helpful too. And then once it occurs, I think there's a thing called hyperbaric oxygen.
Yep.
Which can be very helpful. There's a healing remedy called a light stem. And I've been exploring all of these to try to bring athletes to higher productivity at the end of a game, because they all come down to the end now, and bring them back from service quicker. And some of those same modalities would be of great use for veterans. So hyperbaric oxygen, I've done stem cells. So the good news is that there are great biomedical breakthroughs that are going to help athletes, but they can also help, all our wounded warriors.
I love that, and I thank you for that. So now I have a question, because like you said, you've represented so many people, and I'm sure you've sat in so many people's houses. Have you ever met somebody where you just know they don't have the best physical talent, they don't have, they don't fit all the boxes, but there's just that one thing? Like, I just interviewed a gentleman. He was a Navy SEAL commander, and he says all Navy SEALs or Delta Force, they have the one thing, the never quit attitude, to one more rep. Is that something you looked for when you were an agent?
Oh, absolutely. you look first for work ethic. Is someone willing to postpone current gratification for future success? In other words, will they practice? Will they study? Will they put the time in that you can't see on the field? So that's the first thing. And but the most critical quality, I think, in life is the quality of resilience. So what do you do? We're all going to get pushed back in life. There are going to be reverses. We're going to be unsuccessful at something. Something untoward is going to happen. That's going to be very disappointing and frustrating. That's going to happen, and it happens in sports. Now what do? You're a quarterback. You've thrown a couple interceptions. The game's getting out of hand. The crowd is booing. The center's looking at the quarterback like he's on hallucinogens for his play calling. Now, what do? Can you compartmentalize, adopt a quiet mind, and elevate your level of play in critical situations to come out of adversity into victory? And so, and it's key for all of us. Can you, in the midst of destruction, detritus, bad circumstances, see the light at the end of the tunnel and figure out what you need to do from this point on to make a difference?
And it seems like because I'm a big NFL guy and I'm a big NBA. Those are my two sports. But it seems like since I've started watching it, you've had great players like Jeff George or Jamarcus Russell that had all the talent in the world, but couldn't make it, a good career. But then you'd have somebody say like Doug Flutie, Warren Moon, Drew Brees, which the Dolphins passed on, which I don't know why, but anyway, but they overcame their resiliency to, like Warren had to come from Canada to play in the U.S. So did Doug. And then Drew Brees had to come back from injury. So, what are the differences between, the guys that mentally just can't make it and the guys that have long-lasting careers?
The ability to compartmentalize, focus in on this moment, not be shaken up or limited by the fact things haven't gone well, and to focus on this moment. So when I'm talking to you, I don't have my phone here. I'm not looking at what time it is. Every ounce of energy or focus I have is on this discussion we're having. And can you put yourself into that situation? And again, it's most athletic contests, 25-30% of them are blowouts. But at the end of last season, we saw 4 playoff games on one weekend come down to the very last play. Now, if you went to Las Vegas and bet that 4 playoff games would come down to the last play, you would own casinos, right? I mean, it's impossible, but it happened. And so 2/3 of games come down to the last quarter, last play. So what are you going to do in those critical situations? And again, it's about the ability to tune out negativity, to ignore what happened in the past, learn from it, but ignore and where can you go from here? So, for example, I struggled with alcohol some years ago, and I finally got to the point where all I could think about was where can I find more vodka, and but the key was a sense of proportionality, that I wasn't a starving peasant in Darfur. I wasn't under the Ukraine bombing run. I wasn't have a last name Steinberg in the 30s in Nazi Germany. What excuse did I have? And so it's being able to come back. Can you envision a better future? And so, Richard, there's a sense of optimism that you can never lose that says, so I was brought up by a father who said, you know, if you go into this barn and you see a bunch of pony poop, there must be a pony in there somewhere. You know?
Yeah.
And so can you look for that? Can you see the light at the end of the tunnel?
You know, and I love that. And I'm a recovering addict and alcoholic. I've been clean over 33 years. So I totally get where you're coming from. Now, you know, one thing about your dad that he's, you know, you mentioned that family was important. And I've seen a lot of people that have reached the pinnacle of their whatever their career is, start to get shiny object syndrome, start looking at the houses, the cars, and the secretaries, and then they lose it all. So, talk to us about how to be grounded, even when you start to become more and more successful.
So, well, first of all, part of it depends on how you were raised. I came from an education family that where people consciously chose to, not different from the military. They made a conscious choice to do something for other people and for the public. I mean, they felt a duty to do that. So whether you go in the military to serve your country or your dad tells you have this deal. I always knew at the end of life that the only thing that would matter would be how good a son I was, how good a brother I was I a good parent, did I raise children well, was I there for friends when they really needed help and it wasn't convenient to be a friend of theirs, did you in critical moments did you back up your close friends, and then what you did of service to the world to make a difference. And that's it. The newspaper clippings, the material things, they all fade, and but you're left with that at the end of life.
So then, how close was the movie Jerry Maguire to what your thought process was about actually telling your guys what they needed to hear and not what they wanted to hear?
So Cameron Crowe, the writer director who had gone underground in a LA high school to write a book called Fast Times at Ridgemont High, called me up back in '93 and said, "Could I follow you around? I want to pick up atmosphere for a film that would center on a sports agent." So he went to the draft with me in 1993 when Drew Bledsoe was the first pick, and he came to the league meetings in '93 where I was walking free agents around, and he was a fly on the wall. And I told him stories. He came to games. He came to pro scouting day at USC. He came to Super Bowl parties, and spent loads of time in my office. So it's not strictly biographical, but there's a lot of life up there on the screen. And I was technical advisor, so I had to vet the script to make sure that if you're actually a sports fan, you know that the look is not phony, the dialogue's not stilted, it's authentic. And then I actually took a young actor named Cuba Gooding Jr. down to Phoenix for a week, and I made him pretend he was a wide receiver to put him in the role. And so he had to pretend he was my client all week at the Super Bowl. And I actually had to show the quarterback in the film, played by Jerry O'Connell, how to throw a spiral, because he had gone to NYU and they didn't have a football program there. So it's been 25 years of going out to dinner or being in an airport, and inevitably someone will run up or walk up and either ask me to say 4 words or say them to me that start with "show me the."
Show me the money, Jerry. Show me the money. But because like in the military, we have it where our upper ranks, we can tell each other, excuse my language, all right, you need to man the fuck up. But if somebody from the outside would tell us the same thing, we would go off. So is that the way it is with agents and athletes, where you can tell them, listen, brother, you need to, you're screwed? Did you have that kind of relationships?
Oh, absolutely. The relationships are really close. I mean, the hardest thing is to tell an athlete the truth when they don't want to hear it. When they're about to do something self-destructive, they're about to sit out of a camp, or they're about to walk out of a situation, or they're about to, and everyone around them, the athlete's up on a 90-story ledge and getting ready to jump, and he's got 15 posse members telling him, law of gravity doesn't apply to you, go ahead, jump, you can fly. And my job is to speak truth. I mean, I'm careful about the way I do it, but you owe an obligation to reality base your client. And they have to understand that if they want all the largesse that comes in professional sports, they've got an obligation to behave off the field, to be a role model, to give peak performance. If you don't want to do that, go play on a sandlot.
And yeah, I agree. And it seems like when an athlete, or even somebody military or any kind of field, when they're doing great, they have all these people around them, hang-arounders. You're doing great, keep going. But when the shit hits the fan and you look around, you only have that, maybe if you're lucky, one or two supporters still by your side, right?
Right, except that both fields have some of the same values, which does prepare you to be a success if you can get through the PTSD and depression. There's a great treatment for PTSD called EMDR, and it's been very successful in curing trauma. So, and at the end of doing a session, and it's really easy, you remember the event that happened, the thing that is the awful thing that you don't want to re-experience, but it doesn't trigger you anymore. You can remember it, but it takes the emotional charge out of it, so you're not triggered by inappropriate things in the world that put you back in that place, right? That place of horror. So, but again, just take these basic concepts. The ability to postpone current gratification for future success. They're in the military, they're in sports. The ability to operate within a team concept, teamwork. They're in both situations. The ability to take large amounts of information and process them in action in real time. Again, in both situations. Courage under pressure. Both situations. If you take that skill set and apply it to second career for an athlete or second career for someone in the military, they've got the skill set to be successful in business or any other thing. In other words, that same discipline and preparation works in the world, and the ability to take complex, confused situations and figure them out.
And one thing, like you said, between military and athletes is a lot of us, we have that push. We have that grind mentality. I call it the Mamba mentality, because I'm a big Kobe guy, and unfortunately, I'm a Dolphins fan, so I always hated the Patriots, but I love Tom Brady. It's because I love the preparation that he puts in. He's the first one there, last one to go, puts football first, takes care of his body, takes care of his nutrition. And Kobe was the same way, because
they're using some of the same techniques I talked about: hyperbaric oxygen, light stem, the different brain concepts. They're using all this cutting edge medicine. So Tom Brady's so disciplined that he measures out every ounce of food that goes in his body. He's He's doing massage. He's doing all these treatments. So we're in a new age.
All right. So now talking about the new age, obviously, like you said, there was no such thing as sports agents. So in the new world, what does that look like now? And do you have to go to college for that one thing? Become a lawyer? What do you got to do?
So if you want to be represent NFL players, you need to be certified by the Players Association. Same with baseball, same with basketball, same with hockey. And they have unions that the agent needs to be certified by. So that takes an undergrad degree in all the sports, but in football, it takes some form of a postgraduate degree. You do not have to be a lawyer and go to law school. You could get a master's in, sociology or psychology or sports management or anything. And then you have to take a test on the collective bargaining agreement to show you understand it, which is pretty difficult. And then you get certified, and they have state regulation in so many different states. So you have to be registered in Alabama to represent an Alabama player. Or you have to be registered in Texas to do a Texas player, or California. And so, basically that's it. Now we've had a new wrinkle that's come into our field, which is name, image, and likeness, NIL.
Just ask you. That's where I was going. I was just gonna ask you.
And so for all these years, athletes have lived on scholarship. The NCAA could have avoided all this by taking players from at-risk families or who were living on the scholarship and maybe sending money home, and giving them stipends that would be supplement what they had. You could probably give someone $5,000 or $10,000 and they'd be happy as all get out. But they didn't do that. So California passed a bill 3 years ago called SB 206. It said that amateur undergrad athletes can have marketing agents and go out and pursue endorsements and brand themselves and on all the platforms of content supply. And it's been a huge success. People assumed it was just going to be a couple football quarterbacks, but it's been much more than that. Someone like Phil Knight, the head of Nike, did stipends for every single athlete at Oregon. There are Jack in the box did stipends for 15 athletes named Jack. There are, but the thing that no one expected was that big groups of alums would get together in collectives and use their businesses to funnel money to the campus that would end up being used in recruiting.
Yeah.
So clearly there are colleges out there saying, you come to this school and we'll do $2 million in endorsements for you. So now it can start at any age. So you now have high school players trying to market themselves. And the change in the agent business is that I would normally meet that quarterback in his junior year because he could only come out as a junior. And now all of a sudden, if an agent doesn't spot the next great quarterback coming out of high school and sign him to an NIL, someone else will, and you may never get a chance to talk to that player again.
That's pretty amazing, because I remember back in the day when they would call Florida State Free Shoes University back in the day, because that was a big knock on them. So what's next for you, Leigh? I know you showed me out your window how you're looking at the beautiful water and the boats. What's next for Mr. Leigh Steinberg?
I'm continuing to work on charity. As I said, I'm going to aggregate all those healing modalities, take them into sports, and then anybody over the age 40 who wants to tune up their brain or have better breath or help their joints can benefit from them. We have an agent academy coming up in Las Vegas for people. I've done about 25 of these, and we teach young people how to recruit clients, how to negotiate contracts, how to do a charitable foundation, how to do damage control, how to set up marketing and branding, and work with the internet. So that's sort of fun. I've been helping a new rugby league that's about to form, which will be a new sport. And all you need for a new sport is markets that need teams, a TV contract, and a ready source of players and athletes that can perform. And if those off-season football leagues had been sufficiently capitalized, they would make it, because this country has gone absolutely crazy for NFL football, and they're crazy right after that is college football. So 71 of the top 100 Nielsen rated TV shows last year were NFL games. So we've gone completely nuts. We have one project for Patrick Mahomes where he puts a helmet on and it's virtual reality, and now all of a sudden you're in Arrowhead Stadium, and predicated on what you do with the football in your hand, you can either throw it and get intercepted, or you can get sacked, and it feels totally real. I put together an app to help keep Gen Z and millennials in the stadium for 3 hours, because they're so used to multitasking, and there's not a lot of action in a football game, actual action.
Yeah.
So you hold this phone, and down one side of it goes your fantasy picks for the week, and down the other side goes your gambling bets, and underneath you have the capability of texting, so you can talk smack to people in or out of the stadium. And if you touch it, you can order from the snack bar, and we'll let the fans vote on one play call a game that the coach has to do, and we'll let them vote on one referee overturn. And again, when you touch the screen, you get a unremitting diet of watching other games or puzzles, quizzes, all of which will keep you busy.
That's awesome. Now, my wife loves Justin Herbert. She loves Patrick Mahomes, especially after the last game with Herbert. That kid's got more guts than he totally made me a fan. So I just got to say that if you ever see him, just tell him I'm a big fan, even though I'm a Dolphins fan. I turned into a big Justin Herbert fan.
If you like him on the field, you love him off the field, because he's really grounded. He's got a great heart. He cares about other people, not all about himself. A great leader, and raised by a father who's a baseball player, and so he grew up in that context. And probably because he played baseball, he can throw the ball from some really unusual angles and flip it. But again, a great guy, and now too is starting to come on. I mean, threw 6 touchdown passes over the weekend, and he came from behind, and that builds all sorts of things. We have a quarterback that's filling in for Dak Prescott named Cooper Rush for the Dallas Cowboys, and nobody thought they'd beat the Bengals on Sunday, but he led them back for one last drive, and they won.
That's awesome, man. And like I said, I think those couple gentlemen you just mentioned, off season, I would love to have them come on the show. I just want to say thank you for taking your time. I know you're so busy, but I'm truly humbled and grateful to be able to chat today.
Well, you have a great show, and I'm happy to do it.
I love it. So you said you're working on a book?
Another book. my last book, my first book was Winning with Integrity, which is a negotiation primer, the 12 steps to negotiate for people that we all negotiate in life. And the last one was The Agent, but that one sort of cuts off in 2013. And so this one will take my life from 2000 for the last 10 years and talk about a lot of basic concepts.
I love it. So, guys, make sure you check out Leigh. Everything he does is top class, top notch. Get his books. I love his books. And watch Jerry Maguire again just for the hell of it. It's a great movie. But,
I have my one big scene at the end, and not to quit my day job.
Well, I think you're. I don't think you can quit. I think you enjoy life too much.
I tried to make up a profession, Rich, that had all the things I like to do, and call it work.
And you definitely succeeded at it. So, guys, if you guys love everything we talked about today, leave us a note. And let Leigh know that you appreciate what he did. Leigh, have an amazing week and keep kicking ass.
All right, thank you. It's Leigh at SteinbergSpeaks.com.
I love it. And
SteinbergSpeaks.com.
You are amazing, and I'm going to put all that in the show notes. So, okay. Guys, remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is butt up. Love you guys. Have an amazing week. Leigh, thank you so much.
You are welcome.
God bless you, brother.
Take it easy.